listeners, welcome to All That Remains, episode 7. And Joe, welcome to episode 7. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you very much, apart from the headache I was telling you about before we started.
Yeah, not good. You've definitely had a rough morning. Joe's on drugs.
All legal, I should hasten to add.
We're gonna pull him through. But before we jump into this episode, apologies for this one kind of going out of the usual Thursday time slot. To be honest, I didn't actually think we would be here, Joe. I thought we kind of wrapped up our podcasts kind of last week, and it would be a little bit too tight for anyone we know to kind of get on record, but here we are. We recorded one last night with you, which was our year in review episode, which I think is maybe going up on the weekend. Is that right, Joe?
Yeah, should, all things being equal, should go up on Sunday.
Fabulous. And hopefully you're listening to this one about the same time. So a couple of days late outside the time slot, but it is what it is. And Joe, this is it. The year's over in terms of recording, I think, in terms of our podcasts. So pat yourself on the back.
Job well done.
I am going to have a celebratory beer, Joe.
Oh, he's at the beers again.
Drink.
Every time we record now, I think it's... honestly, I think it's like, oh, God, I'm recording with him again. I'm going to have a beer.
I mean, in my defense, generally what you hear are Coke cans or Pepsi cans. But last night, yes, I indulged, and tonight I'm indulging again. But, it's hot. It was 44 degrees Celsius here today, Joe.
It's been on our news. You've been breaking records. It's like the hottest in recorded memory or something.
Yeah, we're breaking records, and tomorrow they're pegging us to reach 50 degrees Celsius. So I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit off the top of my head for US listeners, but punch it in a converter or a calculator and you'll find out real quick. But that's freaking hot. Like we're not even at 50 yet, but I went outside today and it was 45. And the air stings your eyes.
I experienced 45 in Spain a couple of years back, and I'd never felt anything like it. It was unreal. And I went for a walk one day, and I lasted about 20 minutes and came back home.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
it'll drain you really quick, the heat, like really quick. Yeah, it's you got to be careful. You honestly do have to be careful with the heat. You can't be out in it. It can kill you if you're out in it too long. So just like the cold, you're not going to go out into the snow,
Exactly, yeah.
Indefinitely. So same with the heat. But Joe, we're way off topic already. We haven't even started, and we were going to try to keep this one relatively brief.
Well, we are talking about heat, and I think that might come up in this.
Well, yeah, he's on the ball. So. Yes, the Xbox One X. Now, obviously, we're a little bit late to the party on the Xbox One X reactions, but maybe that's a good thing because we've had a while to let it digest. I was certainly very hyped and excited at the time, and I think that's kind of simmered down a little bit since, which is probably good. But yeah, Phil Spencer and the Microsoft Xbox gang revealed the Xbox Series X. I'll be careful how I say that because I keep saying Xbox One X. But no, it's the Xbox Series X was revealed in a roughly 2-minute reveal trailer at the Game Awards. Now, Joe, I think two things we can immediately address are form factor and the name. And the name, quite frankly, seems to be a bit of a sticking point online. So shall we start there?
Yeah.
What do you think about the branding?
Well, I'm in two minds about this, and I've heard some people talking about it. At first, I wasn't sure. I thought maybe that this is going to be a problem, and I actually think it could be a problem early on with the Series X. I think moving forward, though, I was watching somebody talking about this the other day. It may have been the Unlocked podcast or whatever, but anyway, somebody was talking about this, and they were saying moving forward, it looks like they're going for a kind of branding like with phones. Like you get with Samsung, you've got the S series and you've got I think it's the A series. And, so it looks like they're going to be moving forward and going with the S series, and it could be generational. You've got the S series and you've got they're calling it the Series S now, and you could have Series S2, Series S3, Series S4, and then you could have. Sorry, Series X. I'm sorry, I was saying Series X. I've got S written down because my next thing is, then are they going to have Series S as well? So then moving forward, we could see this being a generational thing. So it'll distinguish between the two moving forward. And I could see that going forward for all the consoles in future from Microsoft. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be confusing initially, but I think that'll soon die down. And I don't think it's going to be quite as confusing as people are saying, oh, it's like the Wii U. And I don't think it's going to be like that because I think it's very obvious a demarcation between the current Xbox and the new one. I mean, you only got to look at the bloody thing. There is such a difference, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't think people are going to be that confused. I think maybe Granny going in and buying it for little Johnny might be a little bit confused, but let's be honest, if anyone's working in a shop and they've got anything about them, they should be able to steer people in the right direction. That's surely what they're employed to do.
100%. They should lose their job if they muck that up for the customer.
Exactly.
I want the new Xbox, and what they're going to give them an Xbox One X.
Yeah.
Maybe the trainee. Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you, Joe. This is nowhere near the Wii U level. The Wii U, when it was revealed, they didn't show the console. They just had the tablet. So that kind of imprinted in people's minds. And they weren't really sure whether it was an add-on, etc., etc. And then, you throw in the language barriers and all that stuff between English and Japanese, and there you go. But I'm with you. I think this is Microsoft trying to break away into a sustainable branding future. Because they've always been weird with their branding. They've never wanted to go for the numbers because they're always one iteration behind PlayStation.
Yeah.
So they've always been mixing it up. And while that's not confusing because the branding is so strikingly different each generation, it's just not really sustainable, especially when you're trying to create bridge the gap between generations and have a family of devices. Is every device in this family going to be called the 360, the Xbox One, the Xbox One X, and then we're going to call the next one the Keto Box or something? It just doesn't make sense. So I'm with you. This absolutely makes sense pushing forward in the future because you can just keep changing the letter or the number in the series like you would a car or a phone or something.
Yeah.
So the next one could be like you said, the Xbox Series I or T. And the only thing we have to pay attention to is the series number or however they choose to stick with numbers or letters.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, it is a little bit, it is, a tiny bit confusing, I guess, because you got the Xbox One X and then we got the Xbox Series X. But from what I've heard and read is Microsoft don't intend to verbalize the series part. It's just called Xbox, which makes sense. So if you walk in and you go, I want an Xbox, they're like, well, which series would you like?
Yeah.
Then you obviously pick the series of Xbox you want based on your budget and what capabilities you want the machine to have. So I think that makes it very easy. Again, like, to retread ground, it only gets a little bit murky when you start looking at the current generation with the Xbox One, the Xbox One S, the Xbox One X. But once that starts to fade away, I don't see an issue.
Yeah, exactly.
So, branding-wise, do you like it though?
The name?
Yeah, Xbox, just Xbox and Series X. Do you like it?
Yeah, I think it actually. Thinking about it, when I like I say, when I first saw it, I was like, what? It's a bit odd. I would have liked something a bit more striking. But the more I thought about it, if you actually look at the design, and then you look at the naming, it's all very clean. It's all very simple. And I think that's what they're going for. I think they're going for something that is a little bit more looking at the high-end phone market, looking at something that is your hi-fi. Do you know what I mean? I described the actual design of it as being like, and we'll get onto the design in a minute, but I described it as being like something like a high-end power amp or something like that. And I know that Phil Spencer likes his high-end hi-fi stuff, and he's always making analogies about hi-fi. So I think that's what they're going for. And somebody else said about, with the design and also with the naming, it's like this whole move into things like Alexa and stuff, and they're very clean. You don't see it. It's very understated. And I think that's what they're going for all across the board. And then the naming fits with that for me. And so the more I see of it and the more I think about it, the more I think it makes sense. And yeah, I haven't got a problem with it at all, to be honest.
I was definitely on the fence when I first saw it. But now that I've kind of seen some more images of it, and I think specifically when you actually see it written down in the promotion reveal trailer, it looks good.
Yeah.
Like, it just looks good. So I like it for more than one reason, which we've already covered. But yeah, I like it. But let's move into the design, because we're already touching on it.
Yep.
You mentioned hi-fi, and I can completely see that in one particular aspect of the the rendered images of the machine, and that's the feet on the bottom. Like, it actually does look like it's like sitting on real, like, 4 feet, like you would see like an amp or like a high-end set of speakers or something like that. It looks good. Like, I haven't seen feet on consoles like that before. So that's one aesthetic that I really like, and it's probably serves a practical purpose, which we might as well talk about now, and that's cooling.
Yep.
And we touched on this in our recording last night, which again should hopefully be available now on your channel, give or take a day or so. And that is, cooling and aesthetics. Are the aesthetics because of cooling and the hardware that's gone into it? Or is it just kind of a bold design that they've gone for?
I think...
What are your thoughts on that, Joe?
I think a little bit of both, but I think if you look at what Phil Spencer said, maybe a couple of months ago, he said the design of the new Xbox was going to all be about the function. And I think what's happened is they've looked at the power they want to provide, and they've looked at how they can go about providing that power and without having the issues that they had with something like the 360. So they've looked at that, they've had their remit for what this thing's going to produce in terms of teraflops and all the other technical nonsense. And then they've gone away and they've tried to design something around its function. So it's function first, form second. But then if you look at the form, I think they wanted something clean and crisp and understated. I really do look at it and I think this is being designed to be understated, because no matter what the form factor is, the size of it is, they could have made it more angular, or they could have had more color, or all these things. But no, the whole thing, it does look like it wants to be very understated, and it screams that to me. It screams something like, we've got all the personal assistant things like Alexa and all that kind of stuff. But the other thing, like I say, it looks to me like it's not as big, but it's something like a Krell amp or an Arcam amp, power amp or something like that. The very clean lines, one button on it, there's 2 buttons on it, but there's, very little to see on there. There's the little slit where the games will be going in if you've got physical. Everything about it, just it's trying to look classy, it's trying to look understated, it's trying to appeal to an adult audience is what it's trying to do. So yeah, I really like it. I wasn't sure. A friend of mine said, and I think we touched on this yesterday. A friend of mine said, people are taking the mickey out of it. And I said, well, who? Who's taking the mickey out of it? The only people taking the mickey out of it are maybe the far end of the Sony fanboys. Because even if you're not that bothered about it, what's the problem? There's nothing about it that's going to make you feel upset or angry, I don't think. Because it's so clean and it's understated. There's nothing to dislike about it, not really, that I can see.
I think the gripe that people are having with it isn't so much its form factor and the shape. It's that they might be thinking it's a little bit bigger than what it actually is.
Yeah.
Like thinking more like mini desktop or RTX build. This, to me, based on the controller leaning up against it, it's kind of roughly 3 controllers high, and maybe just over a controller width wide and deep. And if that's the case, kind of roughly, it's still going to be smaller than probably the smallest ITX builds and more powerful than those builds a lot of the time as well.
Exactly.
So I think people are getting stuck on the size, and I think when we get this thing, we're going to be surprised at how small it really is. And to be honest, I think it could possibly be probably one of the smallest, most powerful kind of desktop-esque machines we're going to see.
I agree.
And I really think this could be something that you could honestly probably easily fit in a backpack if you wanted to take it somewhere. I'm not saying that that's a good idea and people will want to do that. All I'm saying is, for argument's sake, I think that's how small it actually is going to be. And I've seen comparisons with it up against, like, mock-up comparisons, obviously.
Yeah,
mock-up of the Xbox Series X being compared to the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X. And in terms of volume, now when I say volume, like, think about filling up these consoles with water. In terms of how much water they can hold, I honestly think it's pretty much going to be the same as what we already have. It's just in a different shape.
Yeah.
It's not flat, wide, and deep. It's taking its volume and spreading it upwards. So I'm all for it. I really, really like it, and I think people are just getting stuck on the size a little bit. I have one critique though, one little critique, which we've talked about. They want it to look sleek, minimalistic, kind of hidden away. I don't actually like the disc tray, the slot.
Oh, I haven't got a
don't
problem
like
with
it.
that.
I think it looks. Yeah, it just kind of looks a bit weird. Like there's nothing on the front panel except a tray. I would have rather if the tray had maybe slid around to the side, perhaps, so that you can load the disc in from the side. But if you're front on, you don't see it. And again, that's a very, very small gripe.
Yeah.
Aesthetically, I would have just liked to have seen a very, keep it the front just completely flush and squared away. Nothing except the Xbox logo.
My only real concern would be the green light, and I hope that, and I would expect it to be, I hope that is quite understated, that, you don't turn it on and it blooming glows the whole room out with this sort of spotlight
the
of
front
green.
light, sorry, was it?
Say again, sorry?
The top grille? The top grille?
Yeah, in the top grille, it's got a green light, and people were speculating that, it might come with RGB. I can't see that happening. It's just going to be green.
Nah,
it'll be
it's
green.
Off-brand, yeah.
And you'll get people who'll mod it and put different colours in and stuff like that, which is fine.
Absolutely.
But so as long as that's not overly bright, because I can imagine if it was really bright and you had it standing upright and you turned it on and you're using something like a projector. I mean, I've got a projector, and when I've got the Christmas lights on, the screen sort of gets this kind of slightly off colour on it because of the Christmas lights. So if it did that, because it'd be underneath, that would really annoy me. But I can't see them overdoing it. I can't see them making it too bright.
I mean, honestly, Jar, I think, like, even if you had this up against a wall, I couldn't see it protruding much up the wall in terms of luminosity.
No.
Because that would be very annoying.
Yeah.
Especially if it's below eye level. If it's below kind of your eye level, you're going to be seeing the top of that green light all the time. The actual light itself, the grate, you'll be viewing the grate. So I think it's going to be, I really hope, it's going to be a very mild and low luminosity. Absolutely.
I think that would fit with the whole understated thing, to be honest. And I think I can't see them making it anything other than that. Yeah.
And who knows? Like, this was just a digital mock-up, so there may not even be a light come the actual release. Like, things can change. It's a whole year before this console launches. So name and design, I think we're both on the same page. We're all for it. It's bold, it's striking, but still minimalistic at the same time. I really like it. I guess I think we touched on this a little bit last night as well, but Joe, and to go a little bit off track as well, is do you think we're going to see a similar design with the PS5?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Well, if you just let me backtrack a little bit and talk about the fan just for a moment, because with this idea that it's built around the idea of the power, and therefore they wanted a bigger fan that wouldn't make noise, because obviously that they want to keep that noise floor down, because people obviously are not happy when consoles start whining at them. So given
Fair
that's
enough.
the case with the Xbox Series X, I'd be interested to see what Sony do, because they're going to have the same issues with cooling as the Series X. Because, again, we touched on this last night, but the fact of the matter is that these consoles are going to be very, very close in terms of power, in which case Sony are going to have the same issues with cooling. So the big issue here is, how are they going to go about doing that? Are they going to use a similar approach, in which case the form factor could be quite similar? Or are they going to take a completely different approach, in which case they're going to have to come up with some other way of cooling it that doesn't get loud? Because, let's be honest, the PlayStation Pro can get quite loud. And this is going to have considerably more power than the PlayStation Pro. So, yeah, they're going to have to do something. And they may use some, interesting new techniques or ways of cooling. I mean, look what Microsoft did with the Xbox One X. And they did that vapor chamber approach to try and keep it cool. And it all worked fairly well as far as I can tell. I mean, my X doesn't seem to overheat. And before anyone says anything, I'm sure someone's got one somewhere that's overheated.
Yeah, probably here in Australia.
There will be a percentage that will. But so no, I think that's really going to be interesting to me, to see the design of the PlayStation 5. I don't know, but they're going to have to do something, because otherwise they could end up with overheating problems.
See, I'm not so much worried about the overheating problems for Sony if they do go down a typical design route with kind of, the whole flat, deep, wide, VCR-looking design. I'm not so worried about the cooling. I'm sure they'll probably figure it out, but I think the noise will definitely be a factor. And will a PS5 that looks like a typical console seem dated in comparison to Microsoft, which have just literally plonked down something? I'm going to say radically different, and I know kind of the PC space is going to cringe at me when I say that, but for a console, it's radically different.
Yeah.
So will the PlayStation 5 feel stale if they stick to a traditional image of a console? That's probably the biggest question mark for me. And will that kind of show up in sales, perhaps? People being a little bit off-putted one way or the other. They don't want this unsightly, weird cube tower box next to the TV, and they just decide to stick with the tried and true form factor of the PS5.
It could go either way, couldn't it? I mean, the other thing is, maybe Sony come out with something quite radical as well. I mean, maybe, I'm thinking of the Nvidia, the new Nvidia Shield, which is like a tube. There was two versions. There's one that looks like the standard one, and there's the lower end one that looks like a little tube. And given some of the designs and going back again to looking at things like with Google and Amazon with their devices, the different shapes and sizes of things that we're getting now, I could see Sony coming out with something that is more sort of vertical than horizontal, perhaps, or maybe a completely different shape. I don't know. I mean, Sony do like to do that. If you look at their design of the PlayStation 4 with the angular, I don't like the way it's angled, because it causes problems for getting your cables in and putting in USB sticks, especially, is a pain in the arse. So it looks okay, it looks good, but then when it actually comes to the practical usage of it, it's not as good. So I don't know, I could see Sony coming out with something that is quite surprising. I really could see that happening. But again, I think that,
like a floating ball or something like that?
Yeah, I honestly, I could see them doing something. But I will say this about Sony, they are quite conservative. They like to do different things with their designs, but they're not, again, they like to do it understated. They've always gone for that, we're going for the adult audience. So, and this is the problem with Microsoft and Sony, they are going after the same market in many respects. So I really could see Sony doing something a bit different and a bit interesting, but they're not going to go too far. They're not going to push the boat out too far, because that would go outside of their way of doing things, outside of the Sony way, if you like. That's the way I see it anyway. I could be completely wrong.
Interesting. All right, Joe, let's have some fun. let's put our flag in the ground on what we kind of think the design might be. So if you had to take a stab in the dark at the design, what do you think they'll go with?
Bloody hell.
And you can get as detailed as you like.
Oh man, now you put me on the spot. I still think it'll look fairly traditional.
Console-y?
Say again, sorry?
Console-y?
Console-y. Yeah, I do. I don't think they're going to go too far. I think they may alter the way it sits. I think they might. I mean, they could. I do believe that they could go for like a tube kind of design or something like that. I mean, you could actually end up seeing something like what the Microsoft has done with the X, but instead of it being that kind of angular box design, they could go with a rounded design. I mean, I could quite easily see them doing that. If they are going for the thing with a fan and they come out with something that's sort of vertical rather than horizontal and it's got a fan at the top. So I'll go with that. Let's throw that one out there. It's going to be like a tube. It's going to be about the same size and height as the Xbox One X, and it's going to have a fan at the top just like the Xbox One X. There you go. And I'll bet you now I'm completely wrong.
Interesting. All right. Well, I think they're going to go with something similar to the Series X, and this is just me stabbing in the dark. Something similar to the Series X, maybe slightly shorter, but they'll find a way to get some extra angles in there. I don't know how, but it's going to be the same general size, like kind of tall, towery, but they'll find a way to get some fucking angles in there. There'll be a slit. It'll look like some kind of weird, kind of stretched out octagon or something. They'll find a way. You know, because Sony loves angles. They'll find a way to make angles. So they could turn a circle. They could have a circle and somehow fit angles on a circle. So
it is interesting to wonder, though, isn't it? I think the things have changed. What you can do with size and shape and the whole form of it now is up in the air. You don't have to do it like a VCR. It can look different.
I think that's the most exciting thing about the Xbox Series X is it really does look like they've just kind of gone, you know, fuck it, let's do what makes sense. And they're doing it.
Yeah.
And it looks good.
It does.
And it looks fresh. So, you know, at some point it's kind of interesting, like, when do you think the penny dropped for them? Because, you know, they've been designing these consoles in such a specific way for so long, and there's been heating issues, noise issues. At what point did they go, why are we doing this? I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that epiphany.
You and me both, yeah.
I feel like it would have been a very interesting conversation that I'm assuming they would have had to have pitched it to Phil Spencer. Like, hey Phil, we want to throw the traditional design out the window and go with something more PC-like. It's going to be better for all of these reasons that we've just stated. But Joe, before we kind of, I guess, wrap it up, because holy cow, we've been talking about the Xbox for half an hour. Before we wrap it up, is there anything else you'd like to cover with regards to the Xbox One X? Series X, sorry.
I think we should probably cover a little bit more about the specs, perhaps, and some of the claims that have been made by both of the major players, Sony and Microsoft.
Well, I mean, the specs we've had pegged down for quite some time, really, which is Zen 2, Navi GPU. We're looking at SSDs, and they're doing some interesting stuff with like kind of the whole coding and algorithms behind the SSDs, which sounds very interesting. And I guess most recently, the fact that we're going to get like a very adequate cooling on the new design. But where would you like to start with all of this? Because it could get very technical very quick for the listeners. But is there a point that you'd like to pick up with the tech and the specs?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things that stand out to me. One is we've touched on this already, but one is the fact that, you know, Zen 2, Navi, this is exactly the same for both consoles. I mean, you know,
yeah, absolutely.
We're not going to see, you've got the fanboys out there already, and they're trying to knock chunks off each other about we're going to be more powerful than you, and we're going to be more powerful than you. And I'm telling you now, the difference between these consoles is going to be minimal. you know?
Yeah, a bee's dick.
And so they've both come out. We've got, well, I mean, I'm looking at the specs here, 4 times more powerful than the Xbox One X, capable of running games at 120 hertz. And that's interesting. I think that is
up to 8K.
You know, yeah, exactly. I mean, the whole 8K stuff that we've had, both Sony did it first, and then Microsoft came out and said the same thing, and they're kind of vying with each other. Will we be capable of 8K? Well, if these bloody consoles are running at 8K 60, I'll drop dead. Frankly, I will be so shocked.
Look, I tell you right now, we're not going to be playing games in 8K. It's just not going to happen.
No, I agree.
It won't happen. There might be like one freaking indie title that does it, and that'll be it, right? But what we might be doing in 8K is movies.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
We might be have media playback in 8K, and that's it. And by playback, I mean it may not even be the freaking Blu-rays that you put into the system. It might be Netflix.
Oh, it's all going to be digital. We're not going to have an 8K disc format. That's not going to happen. Yeah. There's no money in it. Exactly. No one's buying discs anymore. I mean, even someone like me who's a big fan of buying discs, because you've got, well, there are some, I'm not going to go into it here, but there are advantages with discs, and the picture, all things being equal, should be better because you haven't got all the issues. But nobody's bothered about that. It looks perfectly good enough digitally, from streaming. So 8K is going to be streaming. That's where it's going to be at. These are going to be capable of running Netflix and Amazon Prime and Disney in 8K when those services become available. I agree with you, absolutely. It'll be able to do that. But games, not a bloody chance. Not as a general rule anyway. You're not going to be getting your big AAA titles running at 8K. It's just nonsense. And anyone who starts banging on about, oh, my console's going to do 8K is living in cloud cuckoo land. They've just bought the marketing hype, hook, line and sinker, and they're talking crap. The ray tracing interests me. Watching the Hellblade, Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. I was watching some guys talking about that the other night, and they were saying that it looks like that's using ray tracing in there. They can't be absolutely certain, but it looks like it might be. So I think ray tracing is going to come of age with the next gen. I think Nvidia with their graphics cards, I mean, most people can't afford the high-end cards that are doing ray tracing to anywhere near what they're going to be capable of down the line. But these consoles, if people are coding for it properly, I do think we'll see ray tracing. I do think that the ray tracing will make the games look nicer, and so that's good. The other thing that I have to mention, though, and I don't know whether Sony are going to do this, but this is something that really impressed me, and we mentioned this yesterday, is the backwards and forwards compatibility with accessories. I know I jumped there and went straight into that.
No,
but
that's all right.
That just really impressed me. I think that's really, you said this yesterday, that's really consumer, pro-consumer.
Yeah, pro-consumer, yeah. And I mean, everybody go listen to Joe's chip chat. We spent 2 hours talking about a lot of this, but, it is pro-consumer. And I think there's reasons why they can afford to be pro-consumer, because again, we know that they're aiming more for that end goal of a subscription ecosystem. But the fact that the controllers and the hardware is backwards and forwards compatible is impressive, because that, to the best of my knowledge, hasn't happened. Like, I know a lot of Nintendo peripherals have moved forward over the years. Like, we got GameCube controller support all the way up to the Wii U, I think. But the fact that you can take the new controllers back is interesting. I like it. I really like that in terms of peripherals. Because why force people to buy new, plastic when they don't need it?
Exactly.
And who knows? There's going to be people out there that have the Xbox Elite controller, the first series or the second series. And, they don't want to give up their controller just because a new Xbox has come out.
Exactly right.
And it's just another example of Microsoft, just thinking with their full brain power to go, hang on a second, what will our consumer and fan base like? and not what's going to make us the most money, which is a lot of the time forcing people to abandon all of their previous hardware, peripherals, and games, make them rebuy a lot of the games again in new HD deluxe versions, make them buy new controllers, make them buy the new box.
Yeah,
and this new Xbox coming out doesn't force you to do any of that. You don't even need the new Xbox. Like, a lot of these games will still hit, well, no, probably the majority of the games will still hit the Xbox One X and the Xbox One family.
Exactly. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice here.
Oh no, drugs are wearing off.
Yeah, I'll be a sort of pile of liquid on the floor in a minute. I'll be like a puddle.
But back to the power and the specs real quick, Joe,
Yep.
before I guess we probably wrap it up. I don't know about you, but this generation being the Xbox One generation and the PS4 generation felt lackluster as we entered it. We almost knew it was going to be lackluster when we kind of found out all the leaked specs. And, like, let's be honest, you know, neither console really hit 1080p 60 frames per second straight off the bat. It took another iteration of these two systems to actually hit 1080p 60 standard, and then we started talking about 4K.
Yeah.
But this, you know, specifically the Xbox and the PS5, it really does feel like we have a true next generation on our heels. And like, it kind of what we're looking at, which is like, you know, a radical improvement of CPU, you know, doubling the RAM, you know, just new hardware and architecture going into these systems. Like, these aren't by any stretch like budget consoles. Like, they really are, in terms of a console, they're high-end systems for a console. And it truly does feel like that this generation we didn't get it, but it really does feel like this is going to be a leap and a half in terms of power.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm much more excited for the PlayStation 5 and the Series X than I was for the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, if I'm being honest.
Definitely.
I mean, I've got multiple versions of both.
Yeah.
But I was never really in love with either of the consoles in the same way as I think both you and I were in love with the 360. I just, you know, some of the games, I love some of the games, and I think Sony specifically has done some fantastic things with the games this generation, and I just can't wait to see what both of them, because Microsoft aren't standing back and letting Sony get on with it this time. I can't wait to see what both of them do with this new tech, and, you know, things like ray tracing and the 120 hertz and all that potential that's coming with these consoles. And you know, let's put that in perspective. The 120 hertz is not going to be, it's going to struggle to do that in 4K on both of them, I would suggest. But nevertheless, the leap in power from what we're seeing at the moment, and obviously we have to wait until we get them in our hands and start playing the games, but the leap in power looks significantly more than it did last time.
It's almost...
Sorry, go on.
It's almost a little bit freaky. It's almost a little bit freaky when you start comparing it to where we started with the Xbox One and the PS4.
Yeah.
Like, just how anemic those systems were to where we are now, it's almost freaky. And I think the most not impressive, but what has me the happiest is the CPU.
Yeah, absolutely.
The CPU performance, because that is like, we started with some pretty, like, I think the PS4 is probably the same, but the Xbox was like the Jaguar CPU, which was just anemic as all fuck.
Yeah, they had the same CPU. I think the Sony the PlayStation was clocked higher. I think that was the main area there. Yeah,
that rings a bell. But like, and again, there could be some tech heads out there listening to this, but from my understanding, a lot of AI is based in CPU, on the CPU. So like, it doesn't all have to be visual in terms of our next generation. Like, we could see radically improved AI for this next generation of consoles. And let's be honest, like, the generation of console does often dictate the quality of game that is across all platforms, even PC, because what they target is console platforms, because that's where the biggest install base is. So games as a whole could radically improve now that we just have better CPUs in these consoles.
Absolutely.
So, like, I think that's probably what has me almost the most excited is, hopefully better AI and stuff that isn't necessarily visual.
And let's be honest here as well. I know PC gamers are going to get annoyed with me for saying this, but the reality is, and you can't get away from the reality, the truth, if you look at the stats, the reality is when these things drop, they are going to be significantly more powerful than most people's PC. So the stuff that we're going to be getting from them in terms of games, if the developers get their heads down and actually start producing for these consoles, the stuff we're going to be getting is going to be a significant step up. I mean, I know Hellblade was in engine, so it's kind of a halfway house between a kind of movie and actual seeing gameplay. Yeah. So things can change between now and then, and the actual game may not look as good as what we were seeing in that trailer. Nevertheless, there is going to be a step forward. I think it does hint at some of the stuff, at least, that we're going to see from these new consoles. And I'm talking about the PlayStation as well here. And I can't see how anyone can't be excited about that. I mean, the only caveat might be the price of these things, because they could be significantly more expensive. But I think we mentioned this maybe yesterday, I actually think that certainly Microsoft might be prepared to take a bit of a hit on the price just to get it out the door and get it in people's hands and get people buying their services. And I mean, you said this, services are the key. This is all about services now. This is all about selling, xCloud and Game Pass and getting people locked into those. Because if you can get people locked into those, then you've got their money every month on a regular basis, and it's predictable. It's not like, you release a game and it might do well or it might flop. It doesn't matter anymore. The reality is people are paying that money every month in, month out anyway, as long as you're giving them a regular supply of decent product. And so I could see the prices being, not as bad as some people are suggesting. I do think they'll be expensive. I think we're looking at $500 mark. But
I think they'll be generally more expensive than what we're used to, but they'll still probably take a loss.
Yeah.
But let's not forget that there could well be another iteration of the Xbox around launch as well. There could be a budget version, which is still kind of in that weird space of like rumored/confirmed.
Yeah. I think it's absolutely going to happen. I think we're going to get a Series S.
Yeah. I think you're right too. I think we'll probably see that from PlayStation too. They'll offer the premium, the budget, pick which one you want, depending on what your TV's like, maybe what your internet's like, how fussy are you, pick which one works for you. And I think that's very much probably going to be the case. But yeah, Joe, exciting times ahead.
I can't wait.
Now we have to unfortunately wait almost a whole year until we get these consoles.
I'm like a kid waiting for Christmas at the minute. Honestly, I am. I haven't been like this for years.
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually, in your chip chat, we actually pegged, or it might have been me, I think you kind of generally agreed with it, was that we think we might see the PlayStation 5 in the first quarter of next year.
Yeah.
Maybe around March.
Yeah.
So yeah, because they did that weird thing with the Pro and Mark Cerny kind of offbeat earlier in the year when they announced the Pro. But Joe, let's wrap it up. So exciting times. E3 next year is going to be a big one. We'll probably see full reveals and real physical hardware from both Sony and Microsoft. Games as well. Hopefully we know we're going to get Halo 6. Hopefully we'll see Fable. We'll probably see a Forza, and hopefully something new for launch titles for Xbox. And God knows what Sony will bring, but it'll probably be impressive. But guys, let us know down below in the comments, what do you like about this machine? Or what do you hate about this Series X machine? Is it the branding? Is it the image? Tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like. Be sure to go check out Joe's chip chat, which is hopefully up right now. If it is, it'll be linked down below in the description box. If it's not, go check out his channel, because who knows? Maybe I forgot, and you should go check his channel out anyway and subscribe. Please remember to subscribe to GameCast. And this is it, Joe. We're done for the year in terms of podcasting, I think, anyway. I doubt we'll fit another one in.
We are done.
So,
yeah, we're done.
Have a Merry Christmas, have a good New Year, and Joe and I, in terms of podcasting, whether it be Chip Chats or All That Remains, we'll see you next year. So have a good one.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Indeed.